of his creator. And then you see with his son, Seth, is described as being begotten in the image and likeness of Adam. And so this idea of a son of God carries forward through the generations of mankind. And if we can really keep our mind on whenever generic terms are used, whether it's son or even Christ or God, Messiah, recognize that that's a generic word. It means anointed. It doesn't necessarily mean one specific person only forever. You know, it's an office. And in the case, you know, when, like Ty says, you know, when here in Hebrews 4, he's identifying Yeshua specifically. And so I believe he's going to continue talking, and he's going to be identifying Yeshua specifically. But we can glean more from it when we understand the office of being a son of God is for those who are the son of men. It's an office that we all can fill. The question is, are we in the image and likeness of the Most High, or are we in the likeness of some, you know, of someone else, the serpent, or, you know, not the Father? So anyway, that's my comment.
That was good, Carrie. I guess the recording just started. It's okay, or it's fine, no problem. Well, we got to send you a new mouse.
I gotta say that what you said, Carrie, that's great, because I think that what we're seeking to do here, a lot of people might hear our discussions and feel afraid because they have this fear of rejecting Messiah. But nobody's rejecting Messiah in these words that we're saying, or in these, even the writer of Hebrews was not rejecting Messiah. But I think the important thing here is to try to understand what was the mindset, even in the first century. What was the mindset of the believers? What did they believe? Because so many different doctrines have crept in over the centuries, which is what we now have in Christianity and other religions. And so what we're seeking to do, and I'm saying this for the sake of anybody who may be listening later, who may, you know, have questions or whatever, is that we owe it to ourselves and to our Father and the one who died. We owe it to everyone in the belief to investigate these claims without fear, because that's what we're told to do in the scriptures by the one who inspired them, to investigate everything, not to go off into these long drawn out rabbit trails and be fruitless. But if we don't ever investigate things that we currently hold to be true, then we never grow, which means we've already arrived. And that's not true for me. So it's important that we investigate these things. And if they seem to be offensive, if they seem to be scary or fearful, if we're afraid in doing these things, then all the more reason to push through and do it, because that's the only way we can overcome that fear, is to investigate it. So yeah, I just wanted to say that real quick.
Nice job, Michael. Carrie, since the recording has just started and we have 10 minutes to go, I was wondering if you would kind of recap, because you put it way better than I do, about the generic son versus the more specific son. If you could just kind of go back through that, because I'm very excited about that idea as we go into chapter 5. I think if we read that, we're going to get a lot out of it. And what Michael said about rejecting the Messiah, we're doing anything but. We are embracing the fullness of what the Father intended through the Son. If we seek out the truth and embrace him for who he is, then we have answers to the people that are trying to deny him because of Paul, because of Galatians, because of Hebrews itself. There's a lot of people take this stuff and they're tossing it all out. And it's like, you are missing so much. You're not getting the idea of what it means to be a son. You're too busy following the servant. So anyway, go ahead, Carrie, and then I'm just going to let you transition into whatever you were going to do, because we started late on this and then we didn't record it, so we'll just use this as a break. But I want to precursors chapter 5 with some comments on the son. So do that again for me.
Okay. What I was saying, the idea of being a son of God, I see Adam as being the first son of God of his kind. When God made man in his own image and likeness, essentially Adam would be considered begotten of God, but he was created. He was created from the dust of the ground, and life was breathed into him. So that was the first son. And then you see the example of Seth in Genesis 5 being begotten in the image and likeness of Adam. And he was a son of Adam. And so the idea is we need to understand what it means to be a son of God. And when we are I believe, when we're in the likeness of God, then we are demonstrating that we are his son. So in the opening chapter of Hebrews, he uses generic terms. The term son is a generic term. It's not just one person that ever lived. It's the office of being a son. And the same with the term Christ or Messiah. It's a generic term that means anointed. Now, the prophets all spoke of an anointed one, or they spoke of a seed of David, or they spoke of somebody, and there was an expectation that there was going to be an individual to fill that role. But the idea of being anointed can apply to multiple people. So anyway, I think it's important that when we do study out in the New Testament, especially the words of Yeshua, and really pay attention to what he says, because we oftentimes replace words that are titles as if those words were speaking of a very specific thing, and we limit what those titles can mean. Okay, before I go into what I was going to talk about in this next hour, is there anybody else that wanted to say anything regarding the ending of this Hebrews? We can't hear you. Oh, are you talking to us? No, okay. Are you okay? Yeah, okay. Did you have anything else you want to say, Kay or Hanson?
To be honest, I still am struggling with the idea of, this is going to Hebrews 1, right? The a son being generic, that it can apply to anyone. It can be, I still struggle with that idea because of everything else that's being said of a son. Yes. so just like sat down at the right hand. So does that also apply to any son of Elohim? They can sit at the right hand of the Father.
Did David get that distinction?
I was looking at Psalm 110 verse 1, where this phrase is is quoting from, and David says, Yahweh said to my master, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Who is the master that David was talking about? Yahuwah said to my master.
This is a great psalm. It's mentioned in Matthew when they said, "Is the Messiah to be a son of David?" So this is I love this one.
You know,
Messiah, do you mean? Oh, sorry.
no, I think, I mean, this is great. I'm glad that you're bringing this up because, you know, I don't have all the answers, and I'm not at all pretending to be, you know, have it all figured out. I'm working and trying to figure these things out myself, and I can see how, you know, Yeshua would apply to that psalm. However, I can also see that, okay, I've talked about this before about pleroo, that word, the Greek word pleroo, that means to make full or to fill up. And we see it a lot of times in the New Testament, especially in Matthew. He continually says, this is so that that which was spoken of the prophet might be fulfilled, blah, 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 and then quote something from the Old Testament. Well, a lot of times people will look at what's being quoted, go back to the Old Testament and say, look, this is prophesying of something that's going to happen in the future, as if the author was saying that which was spoken a long time ago was all about what was going to happen on this day, and it was all pointing to the culmination of this event. And I think it's backwards. I think it's I don't think that's what the author was trying to say. Well, tying this back into your question, I think, Kay, there are statements and like David, the psalm with the Father and the anointed, his anointed, the kings of the earth, and kiss the Son lest he be. Okay, these terminologies that are used regarding the Son and the anointed may be more generic than we've been led to believe. And I'm just throwing this out there for people to consider. I'm not saying this is how it is, but these are the kind of things that I'm considering. That when Yeshua came, he filled those words up, words like that. He filled words up, or events surrounding him as the author. He would see how, wow, this really is filling up something that was said in the past that was maybe talking about Egypt, or Israel as a collective nation, or talking about, something that was geared towards another specific individual. But for some reason, well, this kind of fills that up. Yeshua fills up a lot of what has been said in the past. But I'm wondering if it's more than that. Because one of the things that I found in the circles of people that are going back to Torah and then ultimately walking away from Yeshua as the Messiah is that they think that the chosen one is Israel, the nation. They don't think it's a man. They think it's a whole people group. And I think that there's this understanding that, well, no, it has to be either an individual or it's Israel. Why can't it be both? So anyway, those are some thoughts that I had on what you were just saying. And I've got other things I want to say, but I see somebody just posted something here. Michael.
Yeah, I'm going along with what, kind of going off of what you were saying. Is this Matthew 22 showing up on the screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. This is about Psalm 110. King David was aware that the Most High had made a covenant with him and that his son would be sitting as king in the future. So he's prophesying regarding his own seed. I don't think he knew specifically that it was going to be the son of Joseph. What was that, honey?
Nothing. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was.
Did I say something funny? I'm like, whoa.
No, I was trying to scroll down on your screen and I couldn't get the thing to scroll down.
Anyway, that's where it is. And this is an important bit of scripture to understand, because this is what the circumcision group of today is missing. They understand one part of what they're looking for in the Messiah, but they don't understand the other part any more than the guys in this story right here understood. So it doesn't have to be specific. It can be a general. David could have been prophesying about his future seed, not knowing exactly who it was. Just knowing that one of the kids in his line was going to eventually sit on the throne that he has. This is the whole thing that the Messiah is asking the Pharisees to answer for. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but this is a really big point. Why it can be, it doesn't have to be general and it doesn't have to be specific. It can be general and specific. It doesn't have to be either or. The way we're looking at Hebrews here, Kay was asking, it's like, don't try to look at it in one way or the other. Try to look at it in both, if that's possible. As in, yes, we have an example, but before him, we had other examples, but not as specific, not as filled up, not as play-rude. We have a much richer understanding of what the Messiah is now than any of those guys did. I'll unshare now. How do I do that? Stop share. And I'm done with my comment.
Yeah.
So is that because I asked in the chat, like the sitting at the right hand, if it's more, is it more figurative than literal? And so I was thinking like being a right hand man.
Yeah.
Before Yahusha, was there anybody who was sitting at the right hand of the Father, like his right hand?
Yeah.
Weren't all the prophets? Wasn't Elijah?
Moses?
Enoch?
Okay.
Aaron?
Mm-hmm.
David?
Phineas? I mean, there's no shortage of people working on the back. We probably need to look at those words and try to understand them in a different way than what we think it means. I think it's the words that are tripping us up, our understanding in the English culture. So it's his pleasure to use his creation to accomplish his purpose. He could do it himself, but he gives that job to others.
So at certain points in history, like at certain points, there would be more than one right-hand man. Like more than one prophet speaking to Israel.
Well, Melchizedek was certainly that guy.
Well, if you think about it, you can have more than one right-hand man operating within the land, within the whole entire earth.
Mm-hmm.
And,
even in the days of the Messiah, they were saying, hey, this guy's over here doing these things. He says, don't hinder him. He's going about, he's on our team. But it was a different guy. It wasn't one of the disciples. I don't even know where that is. It's in one of the Gospels. But that would be another right-hand man, perhaps. Maybe not as big, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, I do want to kind of get into what I wanted to talk about. It's related. It's going back to Genesis. I mean, you know me, I like to go back to the beginning continually. And in Genesis, the first chapter, with the creation of man, making man in the image and the likeness of God, when after that, it says that, and God saw all these things, and behold, it was very good. Now, when he made man, he gave man dominion. He gave Adam dominion over the animals, over the wildlife, over the land, and told him to be fruitful and multiply and fill the land and to subdue it. And so this is essentially what's happened is you've got God who begets or produces a son in Adam, and he has given him an inheritance. This is yours. This is yours to rule. And he gives him the ability to reproduce after like kind. And then going forward into Genesis 2 and 3, you hear the garden. The man was put in the garden to tend the garden. He had responsibilities, and he was to enjoy the fruit of the land and just being in obedience to the Father. And this is where the whisperer comes in. The serpent comes in and tries to rob him of his life, because the consequence for doing what he eating of that forbidden fruit, the consequence was death. And so the serpent comes in, doesn't go to Adam, but goes to the woman and deceives her, and she eats of the fruit, and she gives it to her husband, and he eats of the fruit. And then the serpent, or excuse me, then God comes in and says, what's going on here? And he ends up doling out a curse to the serpent. First he goes to Adam. Adam says, the woman you gave me gave it to me. And then the woman says, well, the serpent deceived me. And so he goes to the serpent and he curses the serpent. And he says that in that curse, he says, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and hers. And you shall bruise his heel, and he shall crush or bruise your head. The seed of the woman, this is where I was going. The seed of the woman is the Son of Man. And if we can wrap our mind around that concept in a very, like Ty says, it's a parable. Wrap it in it's understand the picture that is being painted for us. The Son of Man has been given power to crush the head of the serpent. Now the serpent, there's enmity between the serpent and the seed of the woman. There's enmity between the Son of Man and the serpent. We need to understand that and carry that forward, because I know in Christianity the teaching is that, well, the seed of the serpent is Yeshua. It's a prophetic, it's talking about a virgin birth, and it's all pointing to the Messiah. Well, I believe it is pointing to the Messiah. The question is, who's the Messiah? Who is the anointed one? There are sons of, there's seed of the woman in the very next chapter in Genesis 4. Adam knows Eve, his wife, and she conceives and brings forth Cain. And then she also brings forth Abel. But then something happens between Cain and Abel. Abel found favor when he brought when he brought his offering to God, and God looked upon his offering with favor. But Cain, not so much, and Cain was upset about it. And God said, if you do what's pleasing, it will go well with you. But Cain chose to kill his brother. Okay. Then you see what happens. Cain was removed from the presence of God. He was, he suffered the consequence of his sin. But then you see the woman conceiving, Adam knowing Eve again, and she conceived and bore Seth. And Seth, she said, was instead, God has given me another seed instead, or to replace Abel, whom Cain slew. Okay, so this is a seed of the woman. Seth is considered a seed of the woman. Abel was considered a seed of the woman. And I think that it's just another way of saying the son of man. The man is the one who generates. The man is the one who knows the woman, and she conceives, and with the help of Yahweh, she brings forth a seed, or another son or daughter, because essentially a son cannot reproduce after like kind without a woman. But anyway, that general picture that we get right from the very beginning, that archetype, is carried forward throughout the whole rest of the Bible. So the Son of Man, okay, with Seth is identified, I said this earlier, and I don't know if this was on the recording, but Seth was identified as being begotten in the image and likeness of Adam, which is right on the heels of saying that Adam was made in the image of God. So essentially, you've got a son of man, which is Seth, could also be considered a son of God, being the son of, you get what I'm saying? So that carries forward over time. Well, you know, the line that's given there in Genesis 5 of sons of God, that's only one line. Now, maybe, and just kind of bear with me, maybe that was similar to a Davidic dynasty. You know how David, his son Solomon, reigned on the throne after him. He had other sons, but the one that was anointed to sit in his stead to rule over the land was Solomon. And then when Solomon lived his life and then died, there was one that came after him in his line. Well, if you take that back to Genesis 5, perhaps that's how it was back then. Genesis, you had Adam and then you had Seth. Maybe they were anointed over, to rule over other people in that day. So they're sons of men and sons of God sitting at the right hand of the Father. They have been anointed. I have given you authority to rule and to reign, and given power and so forth. So in a sense, they are a Messiah, an anointed one, over the generations. That's an idea I have. What do you? I'll open this up to other thoughts on that. But I know this is really stretching our minds, because all I hear my sister's voice in my head. It's all about Jesus. It's all about Jesus. And because that's what I used to say too. It's all about Jesus. Everything is all about Jesus, and we want to make it about one man who has been elevated in not just in our culture, and the culture hundreds of years before us, as God. They elevate this one man as God. And I just recently got a book by Bart Ehrman called How Jesus Became God. And it's very, of what I've skimmed through thus far, I just got it yesterday, it's very interesting. But it kind of, it's made me consider all these talks that we've had, these weeks leading up, especially in Hebrews, and I look at the first chapter of John, and Yeshua continually refers to himself as the Son of Man, refers to himself very generically. Why? And I think the gospel message is that this is, there's more good news than we realize. Okay. So I know what direction to go to next. Let someone else talk and help guide this this discussion. My main point was the seed of the woman is the Son of Man? And let's talk about that. Emily says she's still muddling this through all in her head. Yeah, feel free to.
Emily, I hear you.
Yeah.
Getting away from what we've believed for so long, and trying to just wade through a totally different meaning in scriptures is a lot. It's a lot.
This leaven has fermented too long in my, my brain.
Yeah, it did get thrown out.
Well, if we've been given such a special place on the earth here on the land that the Most High intended it for us, how do you trick people out of that? We have an enemy working against us. Adam and Eve had an enemy working against them. So getting back to what it takes to be a son is the key understanding how to do what the Messiah said we would do.
Like we can't ever be good enough.
I mean, that's what it means to me. Are we right-hand people? Are the sons right hand of the Father on the land? Are we working on his behalf? Are we moving in power and blessing and just all of the things that it should look like that we're all waiting on for healings and why do we not have that? It's because we've been tricked out of it.
Yeah.
And we don't understand it. So guess what? When we were little, they taught us the wrong thing and we're still holding on to that. So we need to toss these paradigms and see it for what it is and understand what our Father has given us and what he wants us to have. He wouldn't have done it this way if it wasn't intended for us. It was his choice. This makes him happy. This is why the Son is. It's all about the Messiah. Absolutely. But then he said, okay, guys, your turn next. And what are we doing about it? I mean, I'm including myself. What are we doing about it? I'm ready to get into the truth of it and be a son.
Yeah, I think it really is a lot. I know, Ty, you and I, we talk about this behind closed doors in our own home. And I think it's still very a fresh perspective that most people haven't really considered for long. All this that we're saying is not diminishing Yeshua at all. We're looking to Yeshua as the example. We're looking at Yeshua as the chief representative of being the Son, a man after God's own heart, of being the Son that is willing to do the Father's will even to the point of death. The Son who, all of these, the life that has been captured for us in the gospel accounts, we read that, and it's to teach us about how to live. And he brings insight to teachings and to words that have been spoken long time ago. He reveals more of it to us than those in the past may have understood. But it wasn't about, he didn't do all that to exalt himself. When his ministry wasn't all about, okay, I'm rising to power, everyone come follow me. I mean, that wasn't what he was all about. It was always to point the people back to the Father. It was always to bring reconciliation between his brothers and the Most High. That's what it's about. And he demonstrated and showed us the way.
He is the Joseph and we're the brothers.
Yeah.
He is a higher office than us always. Not to ever diminish him. No way. But why not understand what the Most High wants and give ourselves a little bit better position as we seek that? the land is for us to take over. And he said we're going to do these things, and I'm ready to see some healings for myself.
Mhm.
So anyway, this is a big thing. This is a big truth. Getting to walk as sons.
In real world application, how does it look like?
Well, Emily just asked, in real world application, what does that look like? Are you talking about what Ty
Yeah.
just said, or just about
Just
being a
in
son?
general, just taking back our power, our dominion. How do we do that in real world?
Well, I think the very first thing is that we need to recognize our value. We need to recognize who we are and whose we are, and
Well,
not take that lightly.
I'm convinced that it looks like holiness first. That if we don't have holiness and we have righteousness and good judgment and our life as an example, and we're not doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing, the power's not going to come. Because you don't give your kid a gun or the keys to the car when they're 5 years old. They have to earn it. They have to show responsibility. And you might give one 16-year-old the car keys, and then there might be a 20-year-old, you're like, you're not driving my car. You know what I mean? We have to get there, and we have to work with what we've been given. We all have our talents. In the parable of the talents, what are we doing with them? Until you do with what you have, you don't get more. So what does it look like? It looks like we need to do the work. We need to be a holy people. We need to be set apart, and we need to stand as beacons of light. We have a lot of responsibility. And if we're not doing that, we're not getting the rest of it. And I understand why. I don't want it till I'm ready, because this is going to hurt me.
Yeah.
Or lead people astray or make me puffed up.
Yeah.
Or whatever. It'll damage me. When I'm ready, I'll get it. But we have to be a prosperous, holy, healthy, complete people. We have to walk after. What does it look like? We need to look like our Messiah look.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I don't know if that helped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, this idea of growing in wisdom. Yeshua grew in wisdom. There was a maturing process, like you were just saying. You don't want to give certain responsibilities to someone who hasn't earned it, who hasn't, for their own protection. So, in the meantime, we continue to learn and grow and allow ourselves to be disciplined. And, when we stray and he, corrects us and say, no, I don't want you to do that. I want you to do this. We need to yield to that and to challenge ourselves to step out in faith when he says, yeah, okay, you know what? I'm going to let you try and drive the car today without me, but I'm right here, and just continue to walk with him and learn from him and exhibit the characteristics that are his, in being compassionate towards one another, being merciful and patient with one another, and all of that, all the while we are developing our character, and we're developing and growing. But we have it in our minds that that we are going to be something someday. It's not like, well, I'm just living this life until I die, and praise Jesus, he's going to take care of me, and and I'll get to heaven, and not recognizing we have a valuable role to play in this life. But we have to we got to grow up. We got to be mentored. We got to, learn the tricks of the trade. We got to do whatever we have to do in the development process. And then when the time comes, if, we get to that point where the Father says, okay, you're ready, and I'm going to use you now in the way that whatever capacity he chooses, mighty things will happen, not just, little things, not just, oh, we said something, a nice word to our neighbor and made them feel good. We can part waters, I don't know what it is. I'm not even, striving for great, mighty things. Um,
What if?
but my
What if God
point,
can't
yeah,
use us?
what
Yeah.
if? And that's the key, like what Ty was saying earlier. How do we not walk in the way that the Father ultimately wants us to walk? We get tricked out of it. We get tricked out of thinking that, there's nothing really more than what we have right now, that we can't be, we can never attain perfection. Perfection just means a whole, for somebody to be perfect means to be whole and complete. It doesn't mean that you have to be God, you have to be some unattainable thing. No, we're striving to be whole and complete, and we're maturing
Fully
until,
functional. Fully functional. That's what perfect is. Fully operating in your intended purpose. And we can do that.
yes. And like on the same with what Ty was saying about the land, that's another way the enemy tricks us out of our inheritance. The right to live on the land and to be productive and fruitful and having children and rearing children and them being a blessing just as we are individually is huge. We can have an impact within the human race, like if we allow ourselves to imagine, we can. The same with how we till the ground, how we manage our animals, and how we manage the resources that we've been given, to where we can feed the hungry and we can clothe the naked and give shelter to those that are homeless. We can do this in a very abundant way. It's within our power. But the enemy wants to, oh, the earth is destroyed, it's corrupt, there's nothing good about it, it's all, we need to start over and colonize Mars, and leave this planet behind. It's not a planet.
You're the only one. You will never be able to do anything. You're alone where you are. You have no power.
That's what the enemy wants us to think. That's how he robs us of our inheritance. All the while, it's sitting right under our feet. It's right under our nose. All that we have is right here, and we don't even recognize it because of how we think, what we believe about the situation. So this is part of our maturing process. We're trying to understand, take on the mind of the anointed, the mind of Christ, and we're trying to understand what it means to be not just a son of man. Everybody's a son of man that's born, but to be a son of God. And that's what we're trying to understand, how to fill that role.
I think ultimately it's going to look like Caleb and Joshua, the attitude of those guys. Oh yeah, land of the giants, let's go. What are we worried about? You know what I mean? We were just reading about the attitude of our inner parts, and I think attitude is everything. Are we attitude of a defeated people? Are we an attitude of people that are going to live abundantly and be relevant to our fellow mankind, and help them on their journey? Share with them what we have learned. So what is our attitude? What is anyone's attitude here right now? What is our attitude? How we approach life on behalf of the Most High, who we claim to believe in and follow? I mean, this is talk about put on your big boy pants, big girl panties. We got some big shoes to walk in. I mean, this is my answer to what it is to be a son. This is what it should look like.
Yeah, I'm just reminded of the anointed, when Yeshua read from the scroll, Isaiah scroll, about the anointed. I can't remember the actual passage, but the idea of what is the ministry that Yeshua had, and is that our ministry? Now, it's going to look different for every person as far as how it's carried out, but the generic aspect of it, of releasing those that are in bondage, and giving sight to the blind, and restoring life, and all these types of things, that's within the power of the Son of Man, who is the Son of God. And we can do that. Oh, look at that. So yeah, anybody have any other thoughts? I'm not sure.
I was just sharing a verse with you, dear.
Oh, I didn't even see it.
Oh, you didn't see it?
Well, I mean, it was up, but I didn't know what you were trying to.
Isaiah 61.
Oh, okay. So I guess I know for me, I find myself wanting to go back to the gospel accounts and read about the ministry of Yeshua and see all of the examples where he says, the Son of Man can do this, the Son of Man can do that. When they say, oh, only God can forgive sins, he says, oh, so that you may know that the Son of Man can forgive sins, I say, rise up and walk. And, look at certain, was he talking about just Jesus? Only Jesus can forgive sins? What happened after he died and rose again, and then he interacted with his disciples? He breathed on them Holy Spirit and told them, whom they forgive will be forgiven. So do we have the power? I mean, if we have Holy Spirit in us, do we have the power to forgive the sins of others in the way that Yeshua did? These are questions to kind of stir up in your thinking. I'm not making declarations that, oh yes, this is the way it is, but this is where my thoughts have been going lately. And
we have the power to heal.
Yeah.
Do we have the power, well, not us personally, but do we have the power to beseech on behalf of someone to
Definitely.
a creator for him to heal them?
Definitely.
Like, outright.
Yeah,
Done.
why not? I mean, in the authority, he says, do these things in his authority, in his name. Well, in whose name did Yeshua come? Did he not come in his Father's name? Yeshua points us to the Father. He's not pointing us to him. He's not saying, everybody, you got to come to me. I'm the guy, in charge. Yahweh says, this guy, you need to listen to this guy. But ultimately, we are all our Father's children. We just recognize Yeshua in his office as being anointed over us. But we all are our Father's children. So we're all expected to model him, right? I mean, now maybe this doesn't go, obviously not every human being is going to take on this call. I think this idea of many are called, but few are chosen. Is that how it goes? There are many that could be considered anointed or chosen, but few are. And I don't know, is that an election on our part, or is that an election on our Father's part? How much control do we have in whether we are anointed of him? I don't know. All I know is that I want to be pleasing to my Father, and I want to do what he wants me to do. And what he does with that, if that means, okay, Carrie, I got you cleaning out the trash, you take care of taking the trash out and cleaning out the trash can after you get that's your job, Carrie. Okay. Whatever job.
Complaint.
Yeah, whatever job he has for me, I'll do it. I don't care. I want to be pleasing to him. And, and if that means if I'm the cupbearer or I'm the bread maker, in the kingdom or in the household, whatever that is, I'm okay with that.
Okay, Michael,
Go ahead, Michael. Oh, we can't hear you. You're unmuted, but I don't hear any sound.
Hello.
Yes.
Better.
So, still good? Okay. So a lot of the things you're saying are causing me all these different little thoughts are just sparking up. And coming into the walk that I've experienced is it starts out with Torah, 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 and then it winds up going that route for a very long time, which is fine. But then there's we're at a point, Tremaine and I both are at a point now where we've been looking at more of the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament writings, and what you said about looking at what Messiah said about Son of Man. And then I'm thinking, aren't there other texts that mention the Son of Man? And what's the context in those passages? And also looking at what Messiah said throughout all of his ministry in the scriptures, and without the preconceived ideas that we've been given, and trying to understand what his words mean, or who was he addressing, what was he speaking about, what was going on with these people in that area where he was at. All these different things that you have to, like if somebody wrote a book today, if a doctor writes a book, and he's going to have language in there that's specific to his trade, that his colleagues will understand and need to interpret. And so, like, for instance, Tremaine can read a science book, and she can just digest it and understand everything that's in it and be fine because she understands the context from which it was written. So for us, in the same manner, when we're talking about the Messiah's words, whether he wrote them himself is irrelevant, but the eyewitness accounts, the testimonies, the gospel, the teachings, all these things are important for us to read them as though they apply to us, yes. But in what context? How do we know the context? Because it's easy to read something, anything in the scriptures, and take it out of context and still make it apply to us. But the idea is to not take it out of context, to get the full meat of what's being discussed and what's the lesson in the text, like we're doing with Hebrews. And I think that's a level that a lot of people aren't there yet, but it's very important for us to do that. And I'm getting to a point where I'm ready to look and see everything the Messiah said. I haven't done it yet, not since I've learned some of the things I've learned now. Look and see all the things he taught and what he said and the conversations he had with the disciples to try and because I do believe that everything that he said, we have, I mean, not just everything that he said, but if we only had the words that he said, and the set apart Spirit puts understanding on our hearts, then we can do the will of the Father. Just follow his example. And so I'm kind of excited about it because I want to see from, not that I have all understanding now and I'll just read it and I'm just going to get it all. That's not what I mean. But I think that as we're learning in our walk, anyone who's seeking the Father, progressively, your understanding should increase on this thing or that thing or whatever in some area. And so I'm excited to revisit those things where I'm at now versus where I was at 6-7 years ago. That's it.
Go ahead, Anson.
Going back to the all about Yeshua. Yeah. Because yeah, when Ty asked, are we ready to be the right hand of the Father? I was thinking, like, many people can be right hand of the Father, but I was thinking, being seated at the right hand of the Father, isn't that supposed to be like a one thing that is it's a privilege that's given to the Messiah? Because yeah, it's kind of confusing with me, like, being a right hand and being seated at the right hand. I tend to think that being seated at the right hand is a special thing. That's and besides, it's only with Yeshua that there's a specific mention of being seated at the right hand of the Father, while the being a right hand of the Father is like we're just speculating on it, you know. But I don't have a problem agreeing with that. It's just that I tend to think that there's something special about being seated at the right hand, and that's only for Yeshua. I don't know. What's your idea with that?
Could the right hand be made up of many members?
He is.
Could the many sons
Yeah,
all together
I
be
don't,
the right hand?
I don't disagree with being the right hand as a multiple, for multiple people. I just tend to think that there's one specific special thing, and being seated at the right hand is that's my simple thinking. Being seated, that there could be only one chair beside the Father, to put it simply, and that is assigned to Messiah Yeshua.
I suggest we look at all the references of that and look at the language and the context of all those mentions. I mean, it would be a good study. But not to diminish, the Messiah has a higher office than the rest of the sons. But it doesn't mean we're all not working in the power. Just reading Isaiah 61. Does this only have to be the Messiah? The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me. He has sent me to preach glad tidings to the poor, to heal the broken in heart, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the recovery of the sight to the blind. Well, maybe we can do 3 out of the 4 right now. Does that have to only be the Messiah, that one single man? Or can we all manifest that? Can it be all of us, all the right hand? Can it be many sons? Or is it just a single son? Or is it a single son and many sons? Both.
I mean, I still look at it as, in the same way that we are all priests, and Messiah Yeshua is the high priest, I look at it the same way that we're all we are all right hands of the Father, but there's one, for lack of a better term, one special right hand of the Father, Yeshua, in which he was also, it was also written that he will rule, for a long time. Yeah, that's my all about Jesus mentality working.
Well, I just say yes. I say yes. You're right on all of that.
Also, keep in mind, Israel was a chosen people out of the nations. So, I kind of see Yeshua as being, or even David. You figure David was anointed to rule over the house of Israel, or over the house of Jacob. But then the house of Jacob was to be a priest, a royal priesthood. Israel, the children of Israel, were supposed to be a royal priesthood according to Exodus, at the giving of the commandments. The idea was that the son, Yahweh's son, his firstborn, was to be a royal priesthood, and then you have an anointed one ruling over that particular body, but that corporate body is chosen from among the nations. So, like I said before, I don't think every human being would be considered a right-hand man of God, but I do think that a chosen people would be deemed at the right hand, with Yeshua being at the head. And that might be what is talked about in the New Testament when we look at it through that paradigm of the church. You know, you hear about Jesus is the head of the body, you know, we are the body, and a very I have a, at least in my mind, being raised Protestant, I have a formulated picture of the body of Christ. Well, it's the body of the anointed. That word there, Christ, it means anointed. And this is what I mean by, I think, I know I want to, and I would encourage others to do the same, is to go back and look through verses and passages that may have been familiar to you in a different context, you know, through the old paradigm. Go back and look at those verses again and try on these new lenses, try on this new paradigm of, okay, the references to the anointed. And, you know, because if you're baptized in Holy Spirit, are we, you know, would we be considered anointed having been baptized in Holy Spirit? The whole idea when in the days of Moses, and Yahweh said he's going to take a portion of the Spirit that was given to Moses and put it on 70 other, and he did that. There were 2 that were out in the camp that were prophesying out there, and they're like, whoa, he shouldn't be talking. And Moses said, oh, that all the people would be prophets. The idea is, this is a good thing. The Spirit, you know, when talking about Joseph, the son of Jacob in the Old Testament, in Genesis, when he was interpreting the dreams of Pharaoh, he was referred to as being one who was filled with the Spirit of God. In him is the Spirit. Daniel, in the book of Daniel, he is identified as someone who was full of Spirit. Nebuchadnezzar, he gave an interpretation of his dreams. Well, he gave the dream first. He didn't even, Yahweh revealed to him what the dream was, and then he gave an interpretation. Well, he's identified as having the Spirit of Yahweh on him. So these are people that have been, the way I look at it, anointed with the Spirit of Yahweh to do and accomplish things. And so if we carry that forward into the New Testament, and these words that we're so familiar with seeing, Jesus Christ, and Christ did da-da-da-da-da, as if Christ was his name. That wasn't his name. He was referred to as the anointed. But like what Michael was saying, if we look at the context of these terms and consider, like I said, this new paradigm, and say, is there something else here that I may have missed because I had a limited view, and now I want to, you know, try out something else and see if it works? That's what I want to do. And that's generally what happens. That's how I study. When I get a new idea, you know, I'll go back and read through the text with that idea in mind and see, does this fit? You know, or am I like way out in left field, come up with this crazy idea, you know, or does this resonate? And does this bring into focus a lot more than what I didn't see before? And that's how I test to see if these ideas are worthy, you know. So all these things that I've been saying in this last hour, again, I put these forward as ideas. We're all responsible. We're all, you know, going to be held accountable for what we say. So my words that I say are spoken in humility. I don't profess to know how it all is. I am not speaking lightly either. I'm not like, oh, you know, I just had this wild thought, let me just, you know, throw it out at you. No, these are things that I've been thinking for a while, and more is coming and giving me feeling justified in talking to people about. So that's why I brought it forth here today. But pray about it. Ask the Father. I'm going to pray, continue to pray about it. I'm going to continue to seek this out myself and ask the Father to show you what he wants you to see. And, you know, maybe this stuff that I'm saying, maybe you're just not ready for it. Maybe, you know, it's not something you're supposed to even be looking at. And the Father will take it away from you and say, no, I want you to go down this path. Fine. I'm not hurt, you know. And he may say that to me too, the more I pursue this. And I want to heed what he says. So just kind of want to put that disclaimer out there. Just because I kind of took on the reins of talking during this hour doesn't mean that I see it as I am the holder of truth and I am distributing the truth to you. I'm just sharing where I'm at. And for anyone that might be listening to this recording, when I was talking about the seed of the woman is the Son of Man, it is with the understanding that Yeshua is the seed of the woman, and he's also the Son of Man in a natural way, that Joseph is his father. Joseph, being of the house of David, is his father, and Mary is his mother. And he was a human being, just like we all are human beings, but he had a specific anointing on him, a specific purpose designated before he was even conceived, just as John the Baptist was designated with a specific role to play in his life before he was even conceived, just like Jeremiah had a role to play in his life before he was even born. He was set apart. So this is not to negate at all the office that Yeshua was to fill. But it is to really bring it down to, he is a man. He was a man born of a woman, begotten of a man. And the promises that were made all the way back from Genesis 1 applied to him as that, as being a man. Okay, that's all I'll say on that. Go ahead, Ty.
I just wanted to say he has an appointed purpose for all of his sons. That's all.
A lot, huh?
I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to say that.
No, I was done. I was that.
Yeah,
that's fine. No, I'm just saying a lot. All this talk in this last hour.
I think there's a lot of it mentions of, like in Ezekiel, Son of Man, or whenever he's talking, and then he works with them, and it's like they get the Spirit, and they become working. They're working as the right hand man. All the prophets, in some way, are filling that son role.
Yeah.
It just,
the thing is that, you know, I'm thinking of passages in the New Testament, whether it's from Paul or somebody else, talking about things found from the foundations of the world. Things were established from the very beginning. And the very beginning is in Genesis 1. And this idea of when he finished, when he did all of his works and come the seventh day and he was finished, he stopped. He rested. He ceased. That was it. He rested from all the things which he had made. So at that point, everything was set in motion. The sun and the moon and the stars, they started moving. The mankind, animal kind, you know, the vegetation and the fruit trees and all that, the process of life had begun. And then it was all created in such a way to reproduce after like kind. And the plan that the Father had, he knew ahead of time what was going to happen in the garden. He knew what Adam would end up doing. And he had a plan already set in place. And it was just a matter of it unfolding over the course of the generations of man. And you see that whole Bible, it lays out a history of his plan unfolding over the course of the begetting of sons by way of their fathers over the generations. And it's a beautiful thing. And it carried forward even into the New Testament with Yeshua, and then even forward to today. And it's a beautiful thing. And when we understand that, what God made, what he did, behold, it was very good. And don't let the enemy steal that from us. Don't let the enemy steal that idea from us, steal that truth from us. Yes, things have been corrupted. Yes, man has really gone astray. Yes, there's, problems in the land today, but praise the Father, because he made us in such a way with restorative properties. If we're sick, we can be made well again. Yeah, if the ground is dry and parched and unproductive, it can be fertile again. It has that ability to. There is life that can go on. The idea of barren womb, women, you see this all throughout. Women who are barren, bringing forth life. So it's a beautiful thing, a beautiful, beautiful thing. And praise the Father for it. Thank you, Yahweh, for what he has done. Go ahead, Emily.
I like to, when you talk about like barren women, everybody always mentions it as a barren woman has children, and it's like, oh, it's a miracle. Yes, but in a sense, it all speaks back to everything can heal. Yah can heal everything, the earth, humanity, everything. Yah can restore everything, heal everything, because that's how he created everything, with the ability to be back to the way it was supposed to be back to wholeness and working properly, healing.
Mm-hmm.
Everything can heal. So that's just how I was thinking about.
It's cool.
Healing's really important to me in many ways. Touches my life in many, many ways.
Cool. Okay, does anyone else have anything they want to say? Otherwise, we can end this part of our session. Well, thank you all for lending your ear. I hope that the words that have gone forth in this from all of the parties involved are a blessing. And, may Yahweh continue to bless you as you continue to seek his ways and walk in them to the best of your understanding and ability. Just praise him. All glory goes to our Father. Thank you.